morning, my brother. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you today?
I am doing very well, thank you.
All right. How are you doing in this COVID environment? Your family safe? Everybody good?
So far, so good. But I've lost a few friends, family members, and a few friends, personal friends, both in this country and in Africa as well.
My condolences. We were just talking about it while we were waiting. How we all have probably have that story to tell. Before we get into the business at hand, I know you are a medical doctor, so I need to have one thing we've been doing here on Coffee Conversations with Greg J. So many people in the Black community are skeptical of the vaccine, and so while we're not trying to tell people what to do, we want our people to be informed, and so we've had a number of different perspectives on the show. And what do you think? Is the vaccine safe for us or what? Because we don't trust the government.
Well, let me say, speaking very broadly, and as a disclaimer, I may be a medical doctor, but I'm not a virologist.
Okay.
But I can say this so people can have a better understanding of what we are dealing with right now. The last pandemic was about 100 years ago. And it was known that in about another 100 years, we're going to have another pandemic. Not sure how and where it was all going to start, but it was anticipated. Just like it's equally anticipated that in about another 100 years from now, there's going to be another pandemic. We won't know where and how it's going to come, but it's going to come. And how have we dealt with pandemics in the past? If you look at all the other pandemics, we came out of them because of the vaccines. Now, there could be people who come up with all kinds of theories in terms of how this virus came to be. But what we need to look at it is, it's here. The question is, what do we do now? It's easy to speculate until you actually face and look at a loved one who's dying because of this disease. It's like saying heart attacks are here and you can control over whether or not you're going to have a heart attack. The reality is we're dealing with that challenge. The difference between a heart attack or high blood pressure or diabetes with this COVID is that it is a new disease. We don't really know what to expect. What is the sequelae on an individual who has been infected by this disease? What's going to happen to them 5 years from now, 10 years from now? We still are grappling at straws trying to understand this disease, and only time is going to give us a full understanding and appreciation of this virus. So when we get to where it becomes another known disease that we can strategize and plan for. Right now, we don't. The first thing we can think of is to say, we need to address the issue of the immunity. So your immune system can be the best defense to protect you from this virus. I'm not saying other conversations shouldn't take place. Other conversations should take place. Citizens should continue to question. But I want people to have the basic understanding that this virus was coming. It was known it was coming. Every 100 years, there is a pandemic that's going to come. We just don't know in what shape or how it's going to come to us. So let's get that clear, that it was anticipated. So when you see all those documents that talked about preparing for this virus, it goes back from this mere fact that we were nearing that 100-year time period, then we would be expecting another pandemic. In terms of the virus and us, the Black community, we do have reason to worry. Why? Because of what has been done to us intentionally, not so much because of the virus itself, but what human beings have done to use these pandemics to eliminate Black people. Look what they did with the Tuskegee experiment. Look what they did with HIV. Intentionally infecting Africans. That is the conversation we need to have as Black people. Whether or not we need vaccines right now, and this is my personal opinion, we do need the vaccines. But what we need to be very careful about is what type of vaccines are going to be given to Black communities, what type of vaccines are going to be sent to Africa. I like to give an example of one of my comedian friends. He says, Ambassador, I'm going to take my vaccine, but I'll make sure I'll stand in the line with all white people. And I want to make sure my vaccine dose comes from the same vial that they got their vaccine. That is the real conversation we need to have.
That's real, yes.
Because we know what has been done to Black people intentionally. What are the chances? And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I know what has been done to our beloved continent, and I know what continues to be done today. Just to give you a reality, over 50% of drugs being shipped to Africa by many companies have zero bioavailability. People think they are taking blood pressure medicines, they think they are taking antibiotics, they think they are taking diabetic medications when they are taking chalk. Every day, as we speak in Africa today. So really, I like to see the conversation be more for holding these companies accountable, that they cannot take the vaccines that they did not think were adequate. They do not take their vaccines that they felt were substandards. And those are the vaccines. Just give it time. Are going to end up in Africa. Are going to end up in the Caribbean. That is what we have to talk about and hold them accountable and let them know that we are keeping an eye on it. We are watching you. You're not going to continue to do what you have done to us in the past. That's the conversation I like to see. Whether or not we need the vaccine, looking at what I've seen, I'm not in practice currently, but talking to my colleagues who are dealing with this every day, it's a nightmare. It's a horror. It's not a horror that we can just talk out and hope we can wake up one day and poof, it's gone. It is here. So let's deal with it. Other conversations can continue, but we cannot deny the fact that this virus is here. And that's my opinion on that one.
That's
but that we should remain vigilant so we cannot be used as guinea pigs again.
Yes. So remain vigilant. And we will continue the case on informing and educating the community, because we want the people to have the information as they make their decisions about their lives. And you're right. You know, the reality of it is the virus is here and we've got to do something. We just got to figure out what that road is. Be vigilant, y'all. That's what you hear. You hear it from the ambassador there. All right. So now, you know, Ambassador, you know, my goodness, last time we spoke, a lot has happened out here in these here streets.
Yes,
you know, we've had an election, we had, you know, civil unrest, we had, you know, insurrections on the Capitol, just a lot of stuff. And you know what the whole thing is in the Black community, if you did not feel that there was racism before, you certainly know that it is here now. And I'm just of the mindset, Ambassador, that we have to, you know, continue to build our own communities, not only here in America, but globally, across the waters, to our brothers and sisters on the continent. And that's all about, you know, building business opportunities and everything like that. And I wanted to talk to you today about business opportunities in the continent, because I know you have a big event coming up virtually where you know, the people can be informed on how they can link up with the brothers and sisters on the continent. But in your mind, how important is at its foundation, is it that we in America create these business connections with our brothers and sisters on the continent?
Extremely important. Very, very important, particularly with the current investment environment that's being created on the continent. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is an agreement that is now allowing African countries to trade freely. The boundaries that have kept African countries from trading with each other are in the process of being eliminated through this African Continental Free Trade Agreement. 90% of all the goods going to be traded beginning this year within Africa are going to be duty-free. Oh, wow. You can imagine the kind of development, and the borders are being eliminated. A lot of tariff issues have been eliminated. A lot of border issues are in the process of being eliminated. How soon we can get to a point where the expected outcomes are going to be felt by everyone, I do not know. Where you can say you can get into your car in the morning and drive through the entire continent from Cape Town all the way to Cairo and not have to worry about the border issues just like we do in the United States. You can get out from New York and end up in Los Angeles. There are no borders. We are hoping for such an Africa. And that's what the African Continental Free Trade Area is doing. The African Continental Free Trade Area is saying, no more shall you need to register your company in 55 different countries to do business in Africa. You register yourself in one country and you can spread like wildfire. We are looking at an environment in Africa that is easy to do business, an environment that is welcoming. What's going to happen, which is what I want all Black people to understand, that Africa is where Black people must be in charge. Africa is the only place for Black people to be on the driver's seat for the entire economic development, for everything to do with management, administration, leadership of a continent, of a country. We can only do that in Africa and, of course, in some of the Caribbean countries. If we miss this opportunity of taking over this driver's seat on the continent, guess what? Those who have exploited us for centuries, we're only going to be opening the doors for them, this time for a complete takeover. Let me make one thing clear to those who are listening today. As we speak today, the colonizers have never left Africa.
Right.
As we speak today, the multinational companies that were running the economies of Africa during colonization, they remain in Africa today. At independence in the 1950s and 60s, African countries were given political independence. And even that, I call it limited, because the average African country, there's so much infiltration and manipulation that makes it difficult for true leaders to win. True leaders to lead like they would want to. There's so many other international policies that limit the ability of these little bit African countries to succeed. The international financial policies, the international trade policies, and of course the colonizers that have never left. So those colonizers are the major employers in every African country. If you were colonized by the British, the majority of the multinational companies in your country and the majority who are now the majority employers are companies from that country. So if you were British, the majority are British companies. If you were colonized by the French, the majority are French companies. If you were Portuguese or Belgium, Germany, this is the situation that still exists to this day. People don't realize that. So as a leader, when 75% of your workforce is controlled by outsiders, who when they get mad at you, they can move their company from Malawi to Botswana and take with them 100,000 workers. And when you move 100,000 workers, you're impacting the lives at a minimum of 500 people. These are realistic threats that African leaders deal with. So I'm saying the Africa we have today is not prepared for the Black people to fully implement the African Continental Free Trade Area, to fully take advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area. What is needed is the capacity, the expertise that is not in Africa. The continent today does not have enough capacity to build the Africa we want. So understand one thing, when we open Africa through the African Continental Free Trade Area, if something does not change, something significant, and that something should be the coming together of the children of Africa in the diaspora with their expertise, with their financial resources, guess who's going to take that seat? It's those who have exploited us. They have the money, they have the intellectual capacity, they have the expertise to come in for a complete takeover. As a matter of fact, they have been waiting, ready to come and take over Africa. The sad thing is the children of Africa, who are the inheritors and the owners of what is in Africa, are still fast asleep. So any of those that are listening, I want them to understand that this time is do or die. If we do not organize, those who have sought to exploit us, they're going to quadruple their positions, and we are going to be reduced once again to be workers and consumers of what they own. And we will continue to own nothing.
I think a powerful example of what you just described is in South Africa. So, like downtown Johannesburg, once a thriving economic center on the continent, and then once apartheid was overthrown, all the big companies and that moved out of downtown. So a lot of those skyscrapers that you see in the metropolitan Johannesburg are empty now. Full of like homeless people and all that. That they call it the CBD, the Central Business District, is really kind of a ghost town where it comes down to corporations and all of that, because the oppressors, when they got out of there, they took their businesses and moved. And like you said, now you're left with thousands of people just kind of milling about. They didn't educate the people. I mean, it's just a lot. There's a lot of ramifications. When
but I like your example, my brother. And this is where you and I come in. Let's take over that building. Let's organize. Let's rebuild the downtown. Why do we need them to build the downtown?
That's
goodbye.
right. Yeah, that's right.
They moved. Goodbye. But we need to organize and strategize and continue Johannesburg City like it was. Why aren't we doing it? It goes back to the mind. Because we're programmed to wait for the white man to do it for us. That downtown is not going to recover until the white man decides it's going to recover. You know what I'm talking about,
right.
My brother.
That's true.
So whose problem is that? It's you and I, my brother. We need to wake up. We need to understand that we are messed up in our heads. Why can't we fix the obvious things that we can fix?
Yeah.
Rather than sit and just be noisemakers. Rather than sit and just complain. They left the building. This is getting abandoned. We'll go fix it.
Right.
Who do you think is going to fix it if you don't come together? But to fix it, we have to unite. And that's why the entity that I created, because I feel very strongly that the people who can look at Africa with a bird's eye view, the people who can come up with a strategy for true sustainable development of the continent and see it through, are the African diaspora. It's very difficult and unfair to try to tell a man in Togo, a man in Central African Republic, in Gabon, a businessman, to think continental. They are struggling to eat a living in Gabon, and you want them to think continental. It's not practical.
Right.
But those of us in the diaspora, we can. So ADDI, which is the entity that I created after leaving the mission in Washington, D.C., African Diaspora Development Institute, is calling on all people of African descent around the globe to say and educate that we are at a do or die moment. Either we unite and protect and defend what belongs to us, our children and generations to come, or we might as well kiss everything goodbye.
Goodbye, sure. What's the website for ADDI? I'm going to put it in the chat. Is it ADDI.org?
It's OUR, OurADDI.org. OurADDI.org.
All right, y'all. I'm putting that in the chat so you can find out all about that great organization. I'm trying to get in the organization and work closer with you there, Ambassador. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Well, let me tell you, we need people like you and your voices, because your voices are going to amplify the message. The diaspora are not doing what they need to do, not because they don't want to, but because they do not know. Quite often, we don't even realize that first and foremost, our biggest challenge is our mind. Our biggest ailment, our biggest disease that we are in the intensive care with is our mind. So that is level one of healing and beginning the journey of doing what needs to be done to turn our circumstances around as a people. The mind, if I can emphasize anything at all, many don't think they're colonized. Many don't think they're suffering from the legacy of slavery. I'm here to challenge you. Think analytically about your behavior, the behavior of all of us around us. I use an example of our communities. Why is it that all our communities, they're full of nail parlors by Laotians, grocery stores that are owned by others who don't look like us? We are constantly consuming what others are bringing to us. Continental Africans, we are buying fufu and kenke and African products that are brought in by Chinese from Africa to the United States, to Europe. How crazy is that? So we have to realize that as diaspora, we must wake up first, Because once we are awoke and we begin to think critically and we begin to pull our resources together, the Jews are a perfect example. After Holocaust, they realized that their sheer survival depended on their unity. But not only their unity, but also their financial muscle. So they sought out to unite and to pull their resources together, which is why they're the most powerful group of people right now, because of their financial resources. They're a small group, 50 million Jews outside Israel. But look at how powerful these 15 million people are. Let's learn from those around us. When it's all said and done, it's about unity, it's about the financial muscle. Like I always say, $83 a month from 1 million people in 1 year will have $1 billion. Wow. Now make it 2 million people, and year in and year out. Make it 5 million people, year in and year out. We are close to 400 million African diaspora around the world. And for those who are not familiar with who African diaspora are, all people of African descent living outside Africa are the African diaspora. If you're African American, yes ma'am, yes sir, you are an African diaspora. If you're African Caribbean, Afro-Latino, yes ma'am, yes sir, you are an African diaspora. And you owe it to your children and generations to come to stand up and be counted. You owe it to them to defend what belongs to them. So I'm saying, level one, let's wake up. Along those lines, I realized there's a need for us to continue to educate and inform others. I wrote a book called Africa 101, The Wake Up Call. Africa 101, The Wake Up Call. I basically gave you a 101 level understanding where we have been, what has been done to us, and how we need to move forward. So I urge everybody to go to africa101.org, get your copy. It's a hardcover that's autographed, but also at the end of every chapter, I have a video of myself summarizing that chapter, why I wrote it, and what I hope you're going to get out of that book. I did it intentionally, so almost every age level can read it, maybe not fully understand it the first time, but it's a book that you should be able to go back to and continue to learn. It's a book that I'm hoping it can be a household book where parents can have coffee table conversations with their children. Each chapter is a distinct subject matter designed to communicate a specific sentiment and provoke your thinking and better understanding of what is being done to us. But also, above all, understand that we continue to be heavily under mental manipulation. Heavily. And when I say heavily, I mean heavily. As Black people, we are heavily mentally manipulated. Whether you like to agree with me or not, it is a fact. Because if it was not, the dumb thing that we allow to be done to us would not continue. The dumb thing that we are in a position to do something about. I use an example of a Black man trying to open a business in Chinatown. Not a single Chinaman would patronize you. And yet when a Chinaman comes to the Black neighborhood, we will walk past a Black man's shop to go and patronize a Chinaman. And we do it without even thinking. Because the Chinaman's ice is colder, the white man's ice is colder. So let's look at it from a very realistic point of view. Let's not lie to ourselves. We are sick and we need to get the help that we need. And the help is only going to come in the form of understanding and behaving and being proud of who we are as the original people, as mothers and fathers of humanity, as the owners of a continent that was the center of the world once upon a time. The continent that gave the world, defined to the world what it means to be human. The continent that gave the world the civilization as we know it today. Most people don't know that. Without Africa, there would not be the Roman Empire. Without Africa, there wouldn't have been the Greek civilization. All that was stolen from Africa. After they stole it from Africa, they ran off to Europe and called themselves civilized and called us uncivilized. It all starts with knowing our history and teaching our children that as a woman, as a Black woman, you should stand on the tallest mountain and let the world know that without you, there could not be humanity as you know it. How many
All right.
even know
So
that?
now, Ambassador, now with our everything that we've gone through in 2020, and now we're in a new day, 2021. I think a lot of Black people in America have got their minds on, business, investments. I mean, people are really. I know this week everybody's talking about that GameStop stock and all that. So people are really looking at, okay, how do I expand my business portfolios and everything? Like, how do we, give us a kind of the foundation of how we can link up with, with Mother Africa and in specific business opportunities. I know. Let's talk about what you guys are going to talk about on tomorrow in your panel discussion. Zambia. Okay, why Zambia, and how do we link up with Zambia for business?
What ADDI is doing, ADDI understands that there are many diaspora with all good intentions gone to Africa to start a business, and many have come back frustrated. Many have been swindled because they did not do their homework. And that's not to say it's only going to happen in Africa. No, it happens everywhere.
Everywhere, sure.
You must do your homework. You make sure that you create the right relationships. ADDI understands fully the aches and the pain the diaspora have gone through, the pain that the diaspora continue to go through. So we have put in a strategy to say, we are going to be showcasing different countries every month. We are bringing those opportunities to the diaspora to say, this is what's available in this country. Zambia, we have requested specifically for them to give us the low-hanging opportunities in mining. That one is big. If we can do anything, we must get involved in mining. This is why the majority of the Westerners and the Easterners, the Chinese, are coming to Africa poor, and in no time, I've seen sometimes all the way to billionaires through mining. So mining is key, agriculture and manufacturing.
Okay, so wait a minute. So like a lot of us listening to this, we're in the city now. So why mining? I mean, we got to get down to the nuts and bolts of it. I mean, look, I live in the city. I don't know anything about mining.
I don't know, but the thing is, you don't even have to go and mine it, because right now they have very sophisticated mining equipment. You own a mine, and the beauty of the African diaspora is that every time we go into a country, we're making sure that we are led by locals in the diaspora from that country. ADDI is going to have an office before we allow any diaspora to embark on an investment in an African country. We're going to make sure there's an ADDI office that's going to be manned by, at a minimum, somebody from the diaspora, and who's not from that country, somebody from the diaspora from that country, and a local person. And we will be partnering with a private company in that country, and of course, we will have the green light from the government.
Yes.
We will not tolerate corruption in any way, shape, or form. We are going to make sure that those diaspora who invest in businesses introduced to them by ADDI are fully protected. We will make sure that whatever needs to be done to protect this environment, this investment, and this investment is also going to be a special purpose vehicle that has a board that is made up of the diaspora. And we would encourage that those people who are going to invest in this, say, $1 million for this mining investment, they have at least a couple of people that are ready to move to that country to be part of the management team. All those details are being worked out by our trade and investment team and our legal team. But we are saying there has to be some way that we can protect the diaspora. On a personal level, I would not want to get involved in anything that I encourage people to go to a particular country and they lose their money. That I will avoid it at any cost. Now, there may be situations that I cannot help it, but to the best of my abilities, if let's say after the event tomorrow, there are opportunities that some people are interested in, the first thing is to open an office in Zambia. We are supposed to have had an office in Zambia already. If it went for COVID, we're supposed to be in 6 countries as we speak by now. But COVID had slowed down everything.
Yes.
But as soon as we can travel, we will be starting to open ADDI offices in Africa. And that's the office that any company that is going to do business in Africa, they have to go through ADDI in order to make sure that they are protected.
Yeah.
We have done another similar invest in Tanzania. We actually have a list of tenders that the government has classified as international. We are working with a local company, and we are hoping that we can get as many diaspora companies to unite and participate in the tender process. In the meantime, there are other low-hanging fruits opportunities that, again, we're hoping we can begin to organize the diaspora. We have a trade and investment team that's analyzing these opportunities and packaging them. We are hoping beginning March, twice a month, we'll have an offering of investment opportunity in Africa that diaspora can create their own investment clubs, depending on what that particular opportunity is calling for. I have one opportunity right now. Simple investment, 75,000, a group of cotton growing farmers. And this entity can be grown into something big, growing cotton. Zimbabwean cotton is one of the best. So we bring those opportunities and say, those who are interested, those people will be happy to fly them down, will be happy to let the diaspora go and look at meet with the farmers. These are professionals. Meet with them, see what this entity is. Cotton. What can anybody do with cotton? You can't eat cotton. So we're talking those kind of investment opportunities that can be grown into multinational entities. So every 2 weeks, beginning March, the investment team is working on introducing these opportunities so diaspora can create their investment clubs. If the investment is calling for 75,000, like I said, for this one, as soon as enough people put their 75,000 together, that club is closed. They take off and run with it and manage their entity. But ours is to bring the opportunities to you and to protect you and give you cover so you can go and do what you do best. But we have got to get involved.
Yeah, got to get involved. So let me ask you a question now. All these activities that you are creating, I mean, it's really great. I mean, man, cotton, we can make our own shirts and whatnot.
You see, you are a city boy. And you can be a shareholder in a cotton farming entity.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's good.
That's what we're talking about. Just be a shareholder.
Yes.
The ones who can manage.
Yeah. Well, we already import our coffee from Cameroon there. That's the Kalimba Song coffee there. We come from the mountain.
Let me tell you, that's another one. We must bring that coffee to, we have also started a Pan-African store.
Yes.
We are working on bringing products from Africa. We are saying, why should we drink coffee that has been brought to the United States, to Europe, or wherever we live, by others who don't look like us?
That's right.
Why should we keep having coffees from all over the world when the best coffees are in East Africa? I often say, you haven't drunk coffee or tea until you have drank coffee and tea from Africa. That's just
right.
a fact. And
that's
it is
a fact.
The truth.
I'm drinking some Cameroonian coffee right now.
And thank you.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, so now here we are in America. We have a new political, there's political hope, I suppose, right now. Okay, Congresswoman Karen Bass has been a champion for, African trade for many, many years, as long as I've known her. I mean, that's been her, one of her principal pillars of her policy. And now that she is the chairperson of the Congressional Black Caucus, I know now with the new administration, I'm expecting her to even speak more loudly about building opportunities with Africa. Does ADDI work with people like Congresswoman Karen Bass or the Congressional Black Caucus so that we can ease whatever issues the United States might put on trade with Africa?
Well, what you'll find that when it comes to trading with Africa, during my tenure as the AU ambassador, the Congress and particularly the Congressional Black Caucus, they were not really involved. Because all those issues, like when we were talking about the US government wanting to sign individual free trade agreements with individual African countries, which is something that would be counterproductive to the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. All those discussions were coming out of the Department of Trade. I did not see the Congressional Black Caucus being involved in any way, shape, or form. But also what I find is the average congressman doesn't really understand Africa.
Right.
They really don't.
Right.
It's just that simple. And so what you end up finding out is that they get their staffers on any issue to do with Africa. They get their staffers to do some research work on that particular country. And whatever their staffers tell them is what they go by. It's really pathetic, but it is what it is.
Oh, we got to change that, though. I mean,
It needs to change. It
yeah.
absolutely needs to change. So what we hope is, with the Biden administration, through people like Congresswoman Bass, we really need to sit down with them. I remember we had a meeting with Congresswoman Bass, and I talked about the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. They just never heard about it before, you know? And they're asking me, well, how long has this been going on? And what has the African Union done about it? This is something so pivotal. A country that is the biggest risk to Africa's peace and security and Africa's development. And yet, Congress people just didn't know about it. And so there's a need for us to engage them. I think the Biden-Harris administration is an administration that I think will be willing to listen to the real issues, not the superficial information that's being put out. And that's what people gravitate towards and run after. They need to understand the true issues. Like I was listening to a report about an event that's going to be held in France. It's a US-Africa policy, and that they're only going to invite youth and business people and all kinds of citizens, but no leaders are going to be invited. You need to understand that France is not going to just invite all these young people because they love you. No, they're trying to manipulate you. They're trying to separate you out and make you feel like you're special. So you stop associating with your friends because you think France likes you and you're special. We need to understand the games that are being played. So engaging the Biden-Harris administration and letting them really understand what is going on in Africa will go a long way in building the much needed good relationship between Africa and the United States.
Yeah, I think the time is now, too, because, you know, like, I think I always come from a music and arts perspective. So I know with the popularity of contemporary African music is exploding in America right now. I mean, it's really, really huge. You're starting to see your large music companies really invest a lot in African music, right? But I think that as we begin to bring people together through music, you know, all these other opportunities can happen. But we need to, as African Americans, we have no idea of what is happening or the history in Africa. That's why when continental Africans interact with us here, it's like this chasm that occurs because we don't know enough about each other, but we're more common than we are different, right? It's really, really, really something. And so how do we begin to, well, I guess you just have to read, I suppose, but how do we begin to become more informed about each other's history in this European dominated society? For generations, we know we've been all bamboozled. So how do we come to find our commonalities?
Well, it goes back again to, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be really blunt as I speak. Some things, we do those dumb things again. Yeah. My brother, if I take you and my husband and you're walking down the streets of Los Angeles,
yes,
they're going to see two black men.
That's right.
They're not going to see one born in LA and one born in Accra, Ghana.
Yeah.
And then I'll take you with him and you're walking down the streets of Accra. They're going to see two Africans.
Yes.
So that alone, there's no way anybody else can look at you if you're black and think any other part of the world except Africa.
Right.
So first we must understand, appreciate, and just know that we're Africans. We're the proud, the beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and totally indestructible Africans.
That's right.
Let's accept that first and foremost. Yeah. But how many of us are too busy denying being Africans? How ignorant, how stupid can one be? If you are not African, then what are you? Who are you?
They're out there. There's folks out there right now saying, I'm not African.
Too many. But you see, there comes the ignorance. So because you're feeling like you're not African, where are you from? The average black person lives in this country. Wherever you are tolerated. You never feel like you belong. I had a very interesting experience a couple of times at the mission. I opened the mission up. I said, children of Africa diaspora, come home. African Union is your home, and this is where we met. And one time we had a really late event with some youth, and I just hang around with them. We were just talking. About 11 p.m., this young man came to me and he said, Ambassador, I was born in this country, but I've never been anywhere where I felt like I belonged until I came to the African Union Mission. That was profound. That was profound. And if there's some of your listeners who are listening, think about it. You don't know where you come from. Your parents didn't know where they come from. Your grandparents and generations did not know where they came from. Are you willing to perpetuate that? I have never known what it means to not know where you come from. I have taken it for granted until about 10, 15 years ago, when a friend of mine, an African American, just casually said, you continental Africans, you never have to worry about where you come from. This is something we struggle with every day.
Every day.
And for a split second, I asked myself, what it feel like to not know where you come from? There was a deep pain that I had to snap myself out of it. And since that day, I'm now on a mission to make sure that African Americans, African Caribbean, African Latino, you are an African. You don't need an invitation to come to Africa. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Africa belongs to you, just like the United States belongs to you. But Africa is home. That is your base. You can walk on the soils of Africa, any country for that matter, and say, I belong here. And anybody that tries to tell you otherwise, challenge them because they're ignorant.
Well, you know, I organize trips, well, pre-COVID, organized trips we go every year to South Africa for the Cape Town Jazz Festival. And I must tell you that when I bring my groups over, when we hit that airport, we come out of customs in Johannesburg and you see the thousands of, everybody looks like us. When I look at my travelers' faces, I mean, some are crying, they're just overwhelmed by, you know, the fact that they're home. Yes,
home.
Right?
You've arrived.
Yes,
There is something anchoring about that. There is something anchoring when you know where you come from. And every descendant of the formerly enslaved deserves that. Whether you may never set foot, whether you set foot in Africa or not, but knowing that you're welcome, knowing that you can wake up one morning and say, you know what, I'm going home, and you can go to Africa. That is anchoring, and that is the healing that is needed for the descendants of the formerly enslaved. So I'm on a mission on that one, my brother.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting.
I'm on a mission.
The story I love to tell is, so I took my honey on one of my tours, right? And so we're in the airport, and you know, you're looking out for your people because we've just landed after flying for almost 2 days to get down there. And I kind of look around and I don't see her. But then when I see her, she's got this forlorn, not a forlorn, but this pensive look on her face. And I go, what happened? What's the matter? She said when the passport guy stamped her passport, he said, welcome home. And it just blew her mind, right? Yeah, so.
And that's the way it should be.
Yes.
That's the way it should be. And you should go to Africa knowing you're going home.
Yes.
Plain and simple. So if we can get anything that can begin the journey of healing, is us accepting that we're Africans, descendants of the formerly enslaved, accepting that they're Africans. And you notice I keep saying descendants of the formerly enslaved. Nobody was ever a slave. Somebody chose to enslave them.
Yes.
They were never slaves, but somebody chose to enslave them. So let's be clear about that. Those were thugs. Those were criminals who chose to enslave others. If we can accept Africa as home, it is the beginning of the journey to true healing. Which brings me to another point. 2019, the president of Ghana called it the Year of Return.
Year of Return,
and many of you answered that call. Over 1 million of you are supposed to have visited Ghana. Now he is talking about beyond the Year of Return. He has reached out to the kingdom of, I believe it's Obakase, which is where Cape Coast City is. Cape Coast, for those who are not familiar with Ghana, is where one of the two main ports were, where slaves who were pulled out of West Africa, those who came to North America, they were shipped out of Cape Coast dungeon. They call them castles. but it's a port. And those who were shipped to the Caribbean and South America, they left out of Elmina Castle. The president has asked that kingdom to see to having a city built, which is now going to be called the City of Return. The kingdom has subsequently reached out to ADDI, and they're asking us to partner with the city of Cape Coast to realize the City of Return. The kingdom is willing to give us 5,000 acres of land to begin with, and we can have more as we need it. Now, you are talking real healing. When we can stand, the descendants of the formerly enslaved can stand on the soil right by the Cape Coast dungeons and look across the Atlantic and look at the slavers and say, you may have won for over 400 years, but ultimately we are the victors. We are back home. Now you're talking about healing, true healing of a people, something that should have been done centuries ago. African leaders, they have to own this one. Not just the current leaders, but all leaders since independence. We should have done something about the children of Africa that are lost in the wilderness. We must do something. A Jew may never set foot in Israel, but they know they're Jewish and that Israel is always open for them. The German Americans, Italian Americans, the Irish Americans, Chinese Americans, Indian Americans, Mexican Americans, they know where home is. We need to fix this wrong once and for all. And we're going to hold African leaders accountable. They need to push this issue as a matter of urgency. Dual citizenship for the descendants of the formerly enslaved. This issue needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with as expeditiously as possible. This is something that ADDI is also going to be pushed. It must be done. It is the healing that is needed, and it is the healing that's going to begin the journey to true relief and healing of freeing ourselves of the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. That must be done.
You know, I was reading an article yesterday. I think it was the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, or anyway, one of the major, publications. And they were talking about, China, and China is now poised to be the strongest economy in the world as the dollar, the United States is no longer the big cheese in the world. There might be second place, but China is certainly emerging. And I do know that China is aggressively expanding their footprint, on the continent of Africa. Talk a little bit about that, and how can we, how does that affect our brothers and sisters in the various nations of Africa? Because it seems to me like China is coming with helping build infrastructure, where if the United States is over there, they're coming over there with weapons of war. But how does China influence African geopolitics nowadays? Well,
China realized that they were being left out when it comes to the scramble for Africa, which, by the way, has never ended. And so African countries have always had problems sourcing funding. If to get funding from the Western world, African countries are made to jump through hoops. Well, then I think China saw an opening. So now, like one president put it one time, he says, well, we jump through hoops to get money from the Western world. But when China comes in, China has a checkbook and a pen in hand, and they say how much. Right. So for governments that have struggled to get funding, to then get a country that is willing to bring so much money. Now, granted, I think a lot of them may have rushed quickly to get that money without reading the fine print. The fine print. And so certain contracts were signed that they really did not do their due diligence, and they were not well negotiated. But be it as it may, the African heads of states have now come together. 2018, they met with the president of China. They call it the FOCAC meeting, Forum on Africa-China Cooperation. And the heads of state did lay out the issues, and that Chinese people need to be better neighbors, and they cannot bring these horrible contracts that they have negotiated. So I know many governments, those contracts they could get out of, they did get out of. Those that could be cancelled, they were cancelled. And the ones that could not be cancelled are being allowed to expire. However, with all that put aside, the reality on the ground is we in the diaspora are saying we want development in Africa. There's no infrastructure, poor healthcare, poor education. Well, let me give you an example of healthcare, and I talk about this all the time. There are more Ghanaian doctors in New York City than in the country of Ghana. There are more Nigerian doctors in Los Angeles than in Nigeria. And the same is true in every African country. No amount of money put into healthcare in Africa is going to give us the desired results. Why? Because the capacity is not there. The doctors are not there. And yet somehow we want healthcare to magically improve with no doctors. President Nanado is a perfect example. He thought improving healthcare meant building more hospitals, renovating old ones. Well, guess what? Half of those wards are sitting empty, not because there are no patients, but because there are no doctors. So now, if a group of Indian doctors, a group of Chinese doctors come in and begin to fill that blank space, why would we complain? We are not filling that blank space. Only about 40% of Africa is electrified. We need electricity in Africa. So if the Chinese are coming in and they start building power plant, why are we complaining? If you want to do something about it, unite, pull your funds together, go get those contracts. But right now, no. Because all these contracts are contractor funded. They come in with their money because they know the returns are huge. And that is where we are failing. So to sit 10,000 miles away and complain about the Chinese taking over Africa, but we're doing nothing about it. But at the same time, we want development to happen in Africa, because if development doesn't happen, we're complaining and we're blaming the leadership. Are we even making any sense, my brother?
Yeah, very much so. And
we're not making any sense.
Yeah, I think there was a question that came across, and I think we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. But okay, so somebody might be listening to this and says, okay, yes, we need to do something about it, and they're wondering what sectors or industries that they might want to invest in. And I think that you talked about your forum tomorrow is about mining. You mentioned cotton. We talked about coffee. There's so many different ones. I see.
Power is another one.
Yeah, and I see.
These, like for example, if there are going to be so many opportunities in energy. So those who are interested, like for example, I had one in the country Zambia. One of the Zambians calling me very upset that the president had given 200 megawatt contract to the Chinese. And I asked her, I said, well, do you know any diaspora that have enough money and expertise to go take one of those contracts? I said, I'll call the president and see if he can give them one of the contracts. And then that's when she started laughing. Oh, Ambassador, you know how we are. We're not organized. We don't have diaspora who can do that. Other than my sister, she'd sit down and shut up. Until you are prepared to go give power to that 75-year-old grandmother who has never had electricity all her life. You're sitting 10,000 miles away and say, grandmother, you can't have electricity because I don't want the Chinese to do it, but I'm not prepared to do it either. Are you even making any sense? We need to stop being noisemakers and be solution-oriented, goal-oriented. There's a problem, let's strategize and come up with a solution. Our glass must always be half full, not half empty.
Right. We see a good example. Akon has provided a lot of energy, to his area. Have you seen the results of his work?
I know he is still working on it. The work is progressing, albeit slowly, but it is progressing.
Because it's a lot. I mean, people don't realize, Africa, I have to emphasize this, Africa is a continent, okay? And so it's a lot of land, and people live in rural areas, and there's trade opportunities and industries that you wouldn't even imagine. I'll tell this quick story. A friend of mine in South Africa, her brother began to send me pictures of cows, right? And I'm like, okay, what the heck? I'm getting these pictures of cows, So his whole thing was to try to get me to invest in cows. And I'm like, man, I'm a city boy. What am I going to do with cows? And he began to talk about not only selling cattle, for meat, but also there's the traditional and medicinal purposes of cattle. It's a huge market over there. So,
Don't forget dairy.
Dairy, yes.
Dairy.
Yes.
From milking to cheese to everything.
So maybe when I retire, I could be a cowboy.
But here's the thing, my brother. You don't even have to do it. Just be a shareholder. Just be a shareholder. You can stay in LA. And for a couple of times a year, go visit the farm and play with your cows. Just be a shareholder. That's all we are saying. And you just keep slowly investing. So you're a shareholder in a cotton farming project. You're a shareholder in a mining project. You're a shareholder in a manufacturing. To show you how bad the manufacturing situation is in Africa. Do you know, my brother, we even import toothpicks?
Oh, wow.
I'm not kidding you. We import everything. So COVID actually was a wake-up call for African countries because suddenly we were importing everything, gloves, everything, you name it, needles, everything we're importing. Well, guess what? The world shut us down. They said we need everything that we have right now. So African governments couldn't even find where to order gloves and the medical supplies. So now we started looking internally. So now more and more manufacturing of PPPs is now happening. But there is a need for manufacturing in a grand way. Big way.
Yeah. Let me ask you, what is a good resource to find out what are good, sectors to invest in?
The problem is, I will look and see if there is something that has been done through the African Continental Free Trade Area. But right now, the best way to really know what is going on is to go through the government, like we are doing with these webinars, where we are bringing the governments to come and give us
the people. Sure.
Yes, that is the best way to go, because you are hearing it from the government. Because even the government, they are working with the African Continental Free Trade Area, and they will help us say these are the projects, priority projects for the AFCFTA, and how do we tie into the bigger picture of the AFCFTA. But the best way is to go through the countries, which is why we are saying we're going to be inviting different countries to come in and present to the diaspora what opportunities they have. We're going to be very aggressive about this, my brother. This is not a joking matter.
Yeah.
We are going to have ADDI offices in every country, and whatever diaspora decide to get involved in, we'll make sure we're going to guard the investment like a hawk.
All right. So let me ask you this. So organizations like ADDI, great. We tap into you, and this is a good way to, how do we access finance capital? How do we get capital? There's might be business people who have a lot of great relationships with the banking system. Do U.S. banks, when in their business financing, do they see the opportunities on the continent? How does Wells Fargo Bank look at Africa?
Well, here's my position. We're trying to use a completely different model. And I'm using a different model because I know what I've seen. You look at the motels from New York City to Los Angeles. It's not by accident that majority of them are owned by the Patels, this Indian group. And they never borrow money. They pull their monies together. Look at the nail parlors. It's not by accident that all these nail parlors across the country are owned by the Chinese, even in the Caribbean, even in South America. They come together. They pull their resources together. Something that we have failed. We are programmed to write a beautiful business plan, and then we turn around and look for somebody to fund us. You are not free. You are not free as long as you're looking for somebody to fund you. What I'm suggesting as ADDI is to say, if we have these investment clubs, and also we have registered an entity called African Diaspora Development Holdings, which there will be a webinar to introduce ADDH and how ADDH is going to be structured. Can you imagine if we have a diaspora fund that is well funded? So now when diaspora are going to look for projects in Africa, they don't look to anybody else. Because remember, when you're looking for funding from somebody else, and this is something people may not know, a lot of times researchers, they do detailed work, detailed analysis, and then they submit their project to some financial institute in the West, only for them to deny funding it, but they keep your ideas. Or if they give you the funding, they're going to want to know everything about you, including your great-great-grandmother's middle name. By that time, you've already lost control of your project. Let's be realistic. These games are being played every day. Every day. So we need for a change to be completely financially independent. We are in the process tomorrow. I believe it's Saturday. We're going to be introducing a bank, an idea of a bank that's already beginning to be registered in Antigua, which will be an offshore bank. We're talking about having a bank, and we got to have our own fund it is through that fund that we can then fund our projects in Africa. We need to be financially independent. As long as we're going to these banks don't mean no good for us. I'm sorry, but it's just the truth.
So we're running out of time here, Ambassador, but this brings me to this question here, and someone asked this, I think it was Brian McNeish is on here. Let's see. Okay. What about to have these pulling our money together requires unity, right?
Yes.
How do we do a better job of unifying, not only on the continent, but here in the community? Because, man, we can sometimes be our own worst enemy.
Well, this particular situation is calling for us to go outside our communities. And I'm glad you should say that. My husband used to say, my wife, you can't even unite the people in your own village. What makes you think the diaspora around the world, you can unite them? And all I can say is, I believe in what we can do. I know we are very capable people. A journey of 10,000 miles starts with the first step. I'm not going to worry about step number 9,999. I'm going to worry about step number 2 while I'm stepping on step number 1. And when I'm getting to 2, I start worrying about and strategizing about step number 3. I am fearless. I believe that we can. What we need is knowledge, information, and understanding of what has been done to us. I do know that when I exit this world, 20 years from now, when my granddaughter comes to me and say, grandmother, there were problems with the black race, what did you do? They made you ambassador to the United States. What did you do? They're going to ask me, grandmother, there were problems in Africa. What did you do? I want to be able to sit down and say, granddaughter, grandson, together with my brothers and sisters, we united. We came together. We pulled our financial resources together. We pulled our intellectual resources together. And this is what we have done. While the mission is not yet complete, this is where we are living. And this is where you need to unite with your brothers and sisters. And this is where you need to pick up and continue the struggle. Others have done it. Let's look at history. Let's share with them the Jewish experience. Let's share with them the experiences of other groups of people who were left with nothing, but they picked up the pieces. Look at the Japanese. They picked up the pieces. So can we.
All right.
Education, education, and education. That's why Africa101.org. Get your copy. Begin the journey to true self-healing and self-discovery.
All right, Africa101.org. Get the book. It is fascinating, I will say that. And then let me see, tomorrow, we're going to be talking to some folks from Zambia to talk about identify opportunities of investment. So tell us a little bit about that as we go. And I think I'm going to put the link up where you all can register back in. It's in the chat somewhere. Oh, here it is right here. Bam. Okay. Register for Zambia investment event at raddi.org/Zambia Zoom. And so what time is that there, Ambassador?
I believe it's 2 p.m. Eastern.
2 p.m. Eastern time. So y'all get on that, hit that link and get in there and be a part of that. Her Excellency, Your Excellency, man, it is just so awesome to have you on. I mean, I am inspired every day, every time that I see you, just whether I'm looking at you on, various social media, and then just honored that you would come and sip coffee with me on Coffee Conversations with Greg J. And we hope that the community really is getting informed. And you always have an open door here, because we need your information and your insight, especially in such a time as this. Thank you so much for coming through.
I'm waiting for my coffee. So you can't be drinking coffee by yourself.
You got a deal. I'm going to send it today.
Thank you so much. Here's my granddaughter.
Hey, granddaughter, how are you?
She snuck up on me.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Okay, everybody. You know what? Look, next week I got some treats for you, y'all, next week, and I'll announce them. Just keep on our social media, Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. And Coffee Conversations with Greg J on Facebook. You know what it is. And always just love one another.
Thank you so much.
Love one another. Love one another. Peace and blessings.